Welcome. My name is Juliana Salazar. I'm Chief Compliance Officer for the Pacific region of Hub International. We welcome you today to understand the prescription drug reporting requirements under the transparency rules. This presentation is intended to address the needs of self-insured plans that will be required to report under Section 204 of the Appropriations Act. With that said, let's get started. We will be going through today's agenda. We anticipate addressing all of the needs that employers have to overcome in order to complete the reporting requirements. We'll start with a brief overview of the RxDC reporting requirements under Section 204. We'll then have Darcy walk us through the very complex and challenging process of developing an HIOS registration. And then Sonia will address some of the reporting requirements, what kind of reports to submit, and what is the information required to submit those reports. Then I'll finalize with next steps. So with that said, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. I have Sonia Gordon, who is to my left. She is our compliance manager for the Pacific region, and then also have the honor of introducing Darcy Turner. She's our compliance analyst for the Pacific region of Hub International. We have worked very closely to develop these training materials for you. If you have any questions arising out of today's presentation, we encourage you to reach out to your Hub representative, and they will certainly connect you to your Chief Compliance Officer in the region that you currently operate in. So with that said, let's get started with today's presentation. So as we look at our RxDC reporting requirements, this was part of the Appropriations Act, and it requires that employers comply with certain reporting requirements. This extends to both fully insured and self-insured plans, and it includes only medical plans. So if you are a self-funded medical employer and you have already discussed with your TPA, your third-party administrator, or your PBM, who will be handling reporting on your behalf, and that PBM or TPA have indicated that you will be responsible for reporting on certain aspects of Section 204, we strongly encourage you to join us today to learn about those reporting requirements. So who is required to report? It would be all plans, self-funded plans, fully insured plans that are non-grandfathered or grandfathered plans. It's irrelevant. Everyone is required to report. This includes governmental entities. And the only plans that are exempt from reporting would be your plans that are medical plans in the form of an HRA, an ICRA, an HSA is not an ERISA medical plan, dental and vision plans, and accepted benefits, including your healthcare spending account. These plans are not required to comply with Section 204 of the Appropriations Act. What do you report? You will be required to report information regarding your plan year, the type of enrollment that you have in your plan, the premiums that you and your employees pay towards coverage, cost-sharing information, as well as other general plan information. We'll also be including in a report the 50 top most likely dispensed medications, the 50 medications that have increased the most year to year, as well as the costliest medications that your plan pays for, and then also rebate information. Now, when is this report required? This report must be sent to the appropriate entities. We're going to be using the CMS reporting portal no later than December 27th, 2022. After December 27, 2022, which we will be reporting for the 2020 and 2021 calendar year, you will be required to comply with the reporting requirements no later than June 1st of every calendar year. This would be for the prior calendar year. So a critical component to remember is you are reporting based on calendar years, not plan years. So if you're a 7-1 plan renewal, you will be reporting for January 1st through December 31st, 2020, and also January 1st through December 31st of 2021. On June 1st, 2023, you will be reporting for calendar year 2022, regardless of what your plan year is. So it's going to be a little bit of a different challenge for us to ensure that we're only reporting information for the time frame that the reporting is required for, not our specific plan years. So what happens if your plans transition from self-insured to fully insured or fully insured to self-insured? If you have transitioned from fully insured to self-insured, your fully insured carrier, like in most cases, all fully insured carriers will handle reporting under Section 204. However, if you're a self-insured and your TPA and or prescription benefits manager, PBM, have stated that they will not be reporting on your behalf, you will be responsible for reporting based on the timeframes I noted earlier. January 1st through December 31st of 2020 and January 1st through December 31st of 2021. So you would only report for the month that you were deemed to be a self-insured plan sponsor. What happens if there was a change from a TPA to another TPA, or you change your prescription benefits managers, your PBMs, in either 2020 or 2021? In order for you to complete the reports that I will be discussing, and so will Sonia and Darcy, it is important to understand that you will be reporting based on calendar years. Therefore, there was a change in your PBM or your TPA during 2020 or 2021, and those entities have indicated that they will not be filing on your behalf, then you would most likely have to aggregate that information and file that information on behalf of your plan, that is the reporting entity. So it is important to understand that you may not just segment reporting, meaning that I will report half of one year and the other entity will report half of the other year. Unfortunately, you need to aggregate those reports where one entity will report for the entire calendar year. So it's important, if you change vendors, to confirm what, if anything, these vendors will be doing to assist you with reporting under Section 204. Can multiple parties file the RxDC reports on my plan's behalf? The answer is yes, as long as the entities are reporting different sections of Section 204. There are different elements. There's P2, there's D1 through D8, and then there's a narrative. So for example, if your PBM states, we will be filing reports under D3 through D8, you are exempt from reporting D3 through D8 because your PBM will be handling reporting on your behalf. If your TPA states we will be filing only one report, which is D2, then you would be responsible for most likely filing P2 and D1. Hopefully the TPA or the PBM will handle filing the narrative for you, which are the different elements of reporting under Section 204. As a reminder, one entity needs to file the entire report for the calendar year as it pertains to the section they're filing for. So one can file D1, the other one can file D3 through D8, and then you as an employer may be required to file P2 or D1 as an example. So those are things that you need to absolutely discuss with your vendors. What reporting capabilities will they assume versus what reporting obligations will be transferred to you and your plan? How can I confirm that my PBM or my TPA have completed the reports on my plan's behalf? Unfortunately, at this point in time, CMS has indicated that there is absolutely no way of confirming that the reports have been submitted on your behalf. Therefore, it is important for you as a plan sponsor of a reporting entity that you confirm in writing that the vendors have submitted the reports, and most likely, hopefully, you want to encourage a contract amendment to ensure that those responsibilities are clearly outlined in your ASO agreement or your PBM agreement that states that the PBM or the TPA will be filing on your behalf. Now, if the TPA or PBM do not file on your behalf, and they stated that they would, but they failed to, unfortunately, the liability of failing to file those returns would fall upon you, the employer. A couple other items I want to bring to your attention. As we're preparing for reporting, it is important to understand what type of information we need to file. Most of this information is information that you will have on your HIOS system or your control. This could be plan information like your 5500 plan number. You will also find information regarding your TPA's name. The ASO agreement should obviously give you the name of the TPA. And with respect to the PBMs, it's going to ask you, what are the fees paid to your stop-loss carrier? Who was your PBM? All this information can be gathered from your HIOS system or the contracts. For D1 information, part of the information will come from the section we call P2, which is one of the files you submit. For D1, part of the information is predicated on your 5500s or your plan contract terms. The remainder will be coming directly from your HIOS system. Total stop-loss premiums paid, TPA fees, what portion of the premiums does the employer pay, what are your premium equivalents, you just use your COBRA accrual rates minus the 2%. And then when you go to section 2, which is D2, that information will most likely come from your TPA. The PBM may have a minor role regarding the point of service discounts that they may provide for issuing medications, but most of this information will be coming from your TPA and or your PBM. The narrative, which is a series of summary of information that the government requires will most likely be coming from your TPA or your PBM. So just to start our discussion on reporting, these are the elements that you need to keep in mind that you will be reporting on. And it's also important to understand that some of the information is information that you as an employer do not have access to. As you do not have access to this information, you will have to rely very heavily on your TPA or your PBM. Important item to note, I strongly encourage you to convince your TPA, your third-party administrator, to file on your behalf. If the TPA states that they will not be filing on your behalf, and the PBM will only file certain aspects of the Section 204, strongly encourage you to listen to today's presentation because you will be required to register to become a filer, a reporting entity. With that said, a few words that you must familiarize yourself as you prepare for reporting, because you have already determined that unfortunately you will be required to report most likely section P2, D1 through D3, which are the sections that we will be addressing during today's presentation. HIOS is a name given to that health insurance oversight system that is used by CMS to report RxDC information under section 204. It also is used for many other vendors to report various records and information to CMS. The CMS Enterprise Portal is the website where you will be registering to obtain your HIOS ID and pursue reporting. The RxDC is the prescription drug data collection. Earned premiums are the monies that a member or policyholder are going to receive. This includes fees or other contributions associated with a health plan. Life years is a term that you will be required to use for reporting under D2, if my memory serves me right. And that's the total months of coverage for participants and beneficiaries, and then you divide that by 12. Now, a few other items to note that are critical terms to remember. When the site makes reference to a small insured plan, the definition is an employer that covers less than 50 employees. And that means that you are going to be a non-ALE. If you are subject to the Affordable Care Act reporting and employer shared responsibility criteria, please remember, a small employer is an entity that employs less than 50 full-time and/or full-time equivalent employees. That would be an ALE, a non-ALE, if it's less than 50. If it's more than 50, then you would be deemed to be an ALE, which means that you will be deemed to be also a large self-insured plan. So small self-insured is under 50, large self-insured over 50. And then some of the additional terms you need to remember are the 50 costly drugs and the 50 prescription spending increase. So medications that have increased the most in price year to year. This information is collected by the federal government for the purpose of assessing what changes, if any, should be implemented on the prescription side, meaning the pharmacy component of an employer's group health plan. However, it is much more comprehensive than we think. With that said, I would like to welcome Darcy, who will walk us through the various steps that an employer who has determined they are required to file, the steps that the employer will have to file in order to set up their account, and then Sonia will walk us through the process of what kind of information will be filed under each and one of the reports. With that said, Darcy?
Thank you so much. So we're going to go over creating the HIOS registry for new users and how to get started. Here we're going to go through some resources that you will need to have for the RxDC reporting. And major ones to note would be the RxDC reporting instructions, RxDC templates and data dictionary, and the HIOS portal RxDC quick reference guide. The HIOS system access is located at the top of the left page, the portal to get there. And then if you would wish to be alerted on any information or have training supplies regarding the Consolidated Appropriations Act and No Surprises Act, you would want to register under Reg tab. And then also the contact information for CMS is also available. The steps that we're going to go through for registration of the HIOS is registering and logging into the Enterprise Identity Management System, EIDM, or also it'll be called IDM, account creation and identity verification, requesting roles within HIOS, requesting devices, and requesting organization and assigning the organization functions, and then proceeding to upload the files and submit them. So the first step would be the CMS IDM account. And for new users who have not registered on this page, take note that it may take up to 3 weeks for CMS to approve and process the actual creation of your account. If there's a tax ID number that doesn't match the system, then it could be possible that the system will lock you out, and then you would have to wait those 3 weeks. So the first step would be to select new user registration at the bottom of the page, as you can see over to the right. Choose the application page and select the application from the drop-down list. Review and accept the terms and conditions before selecting next. And then after you do that, then you'll go continue with the registration process. Registrations require personal information to generate your user ID and password. So you must select a security question and answer the identity verification and account management information, review the information in the registration summary page and make any necessary changes. Then you can select submit user. After completing the registration, an email acknowledging successful registration to the IDM will be sent along with your user ID. And again, if you get locked out, it could take up to the 3 weeks at most for CMS to approve and unlock the system and allow you to enter the portal. Next is the My Portal page at Add Applications, Roles, and Identity Verification. So the My Portal page will show Add Application in the top right-hand corner, or you can select Click Here underneath the Welcome notice, as you can see to the right. Under Selected Application, select HIOS, as shown over in the right image. And then also under Select a Role, you'll select HIOS User, then select Launch. The system will take you through a series of questions, and this is the ID verification process. Once you complete the questions and answer the identity verification notices, then you'll hit the select button, and I'll take you through that in the next slide. Identity verification step 1 is the overview, and you'll want to review everything and then just select next, and then go through step 2 of accepting the terms and conditions, and then selecting next, and then step 4 is verifying your identity is a confirmation, so then you'll select next as well. The next step will be enter role details, then you'll go into the enter reasons for the request. So after the identity verification process has been completed, you'll go back to the main page and select role details. Once you enter the data for the role request detail, you'll click next, and then users will be directed to the next section, which is enter the reason for the request, which in this situation, it'll be RxD reporting. You'll need to log out and then re-sign back into HIOS. And then once you log back into HIOS using your user ID and password, you'll move to the next step, which will be the multi-factor authentication process, which is also called MFA. This is to register any of your devices. So registering your devices, you'll want to log back in, because we're going to have to log out a few times while we do this. So after you log back in and go to the MFA section, you'll go to My Portal on the homepage, and then MFA, then select Send Email to enter the security code, and then select Login. So on the right-hand side, we have the few steps here. You'll click on View My Profile, My Profile, manage the multi-factor authentication devices, and then down at the drop-down box, it'll say select device. Once you select the device and send the security code and verify, you'll select OK, and then it'll complete the actual registration process. And then you'll need to log out again. There is additional details of the registering of the MFA by clicking the portal user manual, which we also have a link here on the page, but it was also provided in my first slide. So you'll have further detail in the directions as well if you have any questions about that. After you register your device, you'll want to click on HIOS application, which will be listed in the Manage Access tab of the View and Manage My Access page. My portal page is going to show the HIOS button card, and then you'll click that button and then select the overview link. So in the images here, it shows you the My Access page and then what it actually looks like. And then what I'm referring to at the bottom, once you click on the card, it'll say overview, and then it'll take you to the next landing page. So on the next landing page, select HIOS, Access HIOS link. The link will get you to the RxDC HIOS module. So on the left, it says the Health Insurance Oversight System HIOS. In parentheses, you're going to want to select the Access HIOS down in red. And then it'll take you over to the next page. So just some visual learners out there might appreciate some of these screenshots that we took for you guys. The Manage Organizations functionality will allow new users to create organizations before requesting a user role. So you have to have the organization, then you can actually input any roles that you're going to apply to your organization. So new users will not have any role permissions at this time, so you'll have to manage the organizations and then create the actual organization roles. On the Manage Organization page, you'll select Create an Organization, but you will only need to create an organization for your company if you're reporting any data on your own behalf. If there's anyone that will be reporting on your behalf, such as a TPA, then you will not enter their information. This is just pertaining to yourself, your own company. So the next step will be select the organization's primary function. There are descriptions in the actual HIOS organizations over to the right. It's a little blurry, I apologize, but there are an actual description of which these roles pertain to. And so for group health plans, other than non-federal governmental health plans, they should select non-insurance companies. So they're in red and circled. Non-insurance company. So group health plans only need an organization in HIOS if they are submitting the RxDC on their own behalf. So for public sectors, this is an important note. Public sectors who are reporting on their own behalf will need to select a group health plan offered by a non-federal governmental organization to its non-federal governmental employees. So that would be only for those who are in the public sector, such as city, county, anything that's a public sector who's doing the reporting on their own behalf. Next will be to enter the EIN or TIN to search and determine if an organization currently exists in HIOS. So keep in mind, if they don't exist, then you'll have to enter an organization and register an organization. So if they don't exist in HIOS before at this point, then you won't be able to create a role for the organization. If an organization does not exist, proceed forward to number 3, organization details. So over here to the right, you'll enter all the information, the address, which will, if there's more than one address for a company, it'll actually be the address where the establishment is maintained. So where headquarters may be, whichever is the main address that is utilized. So at the bottom, after that information is entered, there's a TPA section which employers will leave blank. Then you'll want to confirm the organization to process the request by clicking submit. And then once you get back to the main entry data entry page, you can go back and review, edit as needed, and then click submit. Next is the requesting roles for the HIOS modules. So here you'll see that there are two different outlines that are bulleted. So for non-insurance companies who are group health plans other than the public employers, there will be a max of 2 users that will be used as a actual role. So one user who is a company administrator in the HIOS portal will be the person who enters most of the data. And then the second person will be the organization role approvers, excuse me. The organization role approvers will be either the company administrator could be one person, and then there's 2 organization role approvers, because one person has to approve the administrator's information that was entered, kind of like auditing it and making sure that the data is correct. And then that once that person is approved all that information, then the other person plays as a second approver. And then there's one person who is also an RxDC submitter, and that can be one of the above people as well. So you can have the company administrator approve and submit, or you can have the organization role approvers submit. Companies that are public employers will have one additional person. There's one company administrator, one HIOS user who is the organization administrator, and then 2 users as the role approvers, and then one person who will be the submitter. So again, the submitter can be any of the above, and then the approvers will just have an extra person who is in addition to the organization administrators. So you have, let me rephrase on how that can look. It could be the benefits, say company's benefits administrator as the company administrator. If HR director wants to review and be the organization administrator, then the 2 users, those 2 people, could be the organization role approvers, so they both approve, and then either one of them can be the RxDC submitter. So requesting roles for the HIOS modules, there's going to be 2 modules that we'll be selecting from, and that will be in the next slide we'll go over. And then the role descriptions that fall under those modules. For the HIOS portal, the roles would be for the company administrator, organization administrator, organization role approver, and then the RxDC module is for the RxDC submitter. And here's the screen, what it's going to look like. So on the HIOS homepage, you'll select Request Role from the drop-down menu. Once you request the roles, there is also, in case you forget who plays what role, up in the left, it's circled, Browse by Module. It has a description of each module and the role functionality. So in this actual image, it shows that the select a module is the RxDC, and then the select a role is for the RxDC submitter. So this is what it would look like when you go to enter the role for the actual submitter. So if you're selecting for a organization approver or the organization administrator, the actual module will show HIOS, and then the role would be any of those administrators, either company or organization administrator, or the role approver. And then the add association, you would add an association only if you needed to. It would be a search through the HIOS issuer ID or organization within with the FEIN, and it'll do a search if you need to search for association. Then you'll confirm your request and then click submit. Under requesting roles for HIOS, a couple things to note is that if you're reporting more than one role, you will need to request the role and then wait for an approval in order to report the second roll. It may take 1 to 2 days for the rolls to be approved by the CMS. You can log back into HIOS and check the status of the request and the permissions, whether or not they've been granted or not, by managing roles under the Manage Roles link. And then after the role request of the RxDC submitter has been approved, then you'll have access to the RxDC module on the HIOS homepage. And next, Sonia will take you through submitting the RxDC reports. Sonia?
Thank you. Wow, thank you very much for that presentation, Darcy. I know those are a lot of steps to keep track of. So now we're going to be looking at how to submit the actual reports once your accounts and roles have been created and approved and straightened out. This, in terms of working with the system, is much easier than what was just being discussed, but it's the assembly of the information needed for those reports that is going to be the most labor intensive. So I will kind of walk you through both processes a bit. So here, what a plan may be doing if they are required to report anything on their own behalf, they would be reporting the P2, D1, and D2 reports most likely. Generally speaking, all groups are going to have to submit P2 and the data files D1 through D8, but oftentimes the TPA will agree to take responsibility for the D3 through D8 reports, as well as the narrative response. But as we've already said, make sure that you are on the same page with your TPA as to exactly which reports you are responsible for submitting. So the P2 report is going to be relatively easy. This is basically the report that's listing the plan names, and it's how CMS will know exactly which plan is being filed for. And if you know which reporting entity is going to be reporting on behalf of your plan, you'll put in that company's name as well and their tax ID number, in addition to the tax ID EIN for your own company and plan. Even if the TPA is also reporting that information, CMS will use the fact that you're reporting as well to streamline and reconcile the different reports coming in from the different parties. Also noted, and we'll go into more detail over this later on, is a narrative response. That will be information that you'll be required to supply. Also required is a narrative response that will go into a little more detail further on. This will be information where you're describing the impact of drug rebates on the plan premiums and cost sharing as well. This is information that will not be easy to assemble on one's own, so either the TPA will be preparing it on your behalf or providing you with the information necessary for you to prepare it. And this is information that would be submitted in Microsoft Word or PDF format. So initially, once you've gone through all the registration and login processes, you will, once you're able to finally log back in the designated role, you will be on the home page and you will come to the area where it says launch this module, the green button with the pointer right there. You will click on that button to select the prescription drug data collection option to start submitting the files that you are specifically responsible to submit. Now, once again, Darcy mentioned these before, but you will see right away that the various RxDC resources will be available for you to look at, download, review. From the screenshot, you'll see the various ones that are available. The ones that we have found most useful are obviously reporting form instructions. This will go over the same information we're talking about here, describing the data and information and way to report the data that you need to use to fill out and submit your plan lists and files, and information that you must include in the narrative file. The module user manual, that'll be useful for the registration process, and the templates and data dictionary is also very useful for spelling out exactly how the data needs to be submitted, in what format, and how it should look. Now, note that groups can use their own comma-separated files. or they can select download templates to get the CMS provided templates themselves. But once you've entered data, you do need to save it in the CSV format before you submit it. That's the only way that CMS is going to be accepting information and templates from the users. So at any rate, once you're on top of all that, you're going to click on Start New Submission on the blue button on the top right of that screen. And from there, it's a fairly straightforward 5-step process of selecting which company and reference years at issue, saving and continue, and then uploading various files in a fairly typical upload or drag and drop kind of setup. So that part will be easy. Again, the part that's not going to be so easy is having all the information ready to go. At any rate, so the first step of the 5 is selecting the submitting organization, which will be your company, and the reference year, which will be either 2020, 2021, or either 2020 or the 2021 calendar years. And note again, the reference year is the calendar year for which you're reporting, regardless of your actual plan year dates. And once you have both of those selected from the drop-down menu, you're going to click Save and Continue but once those are selected, Save and Continue button will become active, and you'll click on that to save the information and proceed to step 2. So I know this looks like a lot, but bear with me, and most of this is very straightforward information that you either have or can obtain very easily. This is going to be probably the most straightforward data report of the 3. Where you're pretty much assembling and reporting company names, numbers, account numbers, or EINs where needed. So initially, in the gray group is going to be your own company's information, your group health plan name, the plan number. That may be the unique identification plan number that you have with your carrier or whatever agreement that you have in place. And it may, so a master contract number, or if that doesn't apply, then the ERISA plan number. And then you'll put in your HIOS plan ID, the 14-digit plan ID number you obtained through this system. And then also you would, if you haven't already, put in the Form 5500 plan number, which is the 3-digit number that would be reported after your tax ID number. If there's more than one value, by any chance, you will separate those with a semicolon. And if this is not actually an ERISA plan, though that's unlikely to apply to most of the people listening to this, you would use a unique identifier. In the blue section, you're going to state where the plan is offered, and you'll enter those states as your normal 2-character postcode, NY for New York, CA for California, for example, and you'll separate each state with a semicolon. And if the plan is offered nationwide, enter the word national. And if there are other territories, enter national and the 2-letter code for each territory. After that, you'll put in the market segment, which is really just either going to be, in this group situation, either a self-funded small employer or a self-funded large employer. And as Liliana explained, a small employer is indicated as 50 or fewer employees, and a large employer is more than 50 employees or an applicable large employer through the ACA. The plan year beginning and end date are going to be the actual plan years. So if you have a non-calendar plan and it renews during the calendar year, you'd be using 2 rows here to show, say, for example, 7/1/19 to 6/30/2020, and then another row for 7/1/2020 to 6/30/2021. And then the last one for that group will be the members of the plan as of December 31st of the reference year. So the first one would be dealing with, if the plan was in existence at the time, I suppose would be December 31st, 2020. And you'd put in the number of members with coverage, and that includes dependents, on the last day of the calendar year. Members there, I think that definition is listed in more detail later on, but that isn't just employees or plan participants. It's going to be everyone who is actually enrolled in the plan as of the last day of that reference or calendar year. And if by any chance the plan ended before the last day of the calendar year, the group would put 0. After that, the plan sponsor name and EIN, which is often just going to be your actual company name. and taxpayer ID number. And then after that are going to be possibly several different third parties' names and EINs, potentially the issuer. In this case, for self-funded plans, you're going to be leaving that blank because issuer is often the carrier. The TPA, if you're using a TPA, your name or the TPA's name and the TPA 9-digit EIN as well. If there's more than one TPA, again, you're going to be entering all of them in this column, and you'd be separating them with a semicolon. And if there's no TPA, you'd leave that blank. And similarly for the EIN, you'll enter their 9-digit EIN. Do not use their HIOS or issuer ID. And if, again, there's more than one TPA, separate those EIN identifiers with a semicolon. And last, if any service provider is a pharmacy benefit manager, you're going to be entering the PBM name there. Also, do not use any slashes, but only separate them with a semicolon. And same with their EIN, include the multiple EINs if multiples apply, and separate them with a semicolon if that is the case. Now, the second part of this is a rather long report, even though this isn't difficult information necessarily to provide. The second part of this particular report is where you're going to indicate exactly which reports you are submitting. And it's a fairly straightforward process where you're just going to enter in 1 for yes and 0 for no if you yourself are submitting a particular report. That doesn't mean it's not ever going to be submitted. It just means that you are not submitting it with the current report that you're putting together. So again, the valid values are 0 or 1. You cannot leave anything blank. You'll enter 1 if it's included, 0 if it is not included in your data file submission. And note that CMS will be using this information to reconcile what you submitted against what another party may have submitted, to note that all the information has been provided if necessary. So if you've put all that information together, then we're moving on to step 2 in the actual uploading process. Step 1, of course, you were just putting in your submitter information, and now step 2 is uploading the actual plans. Now note that you are submitting a P2 report. There are other options, P1 and P3. Those do not apply to employer group insurance. So just look for the P2 group market plan list section and stick with that one. So you'll upload your group health plan list or lists, the P2 file, either dragging the file to that box or selecting choose from a folder link, and you would be able to upload from there. Now, once you've uploaded the CSV file, the system will show whether that was successful and if there were any errors. And a successful file will show the green checkmark box that we see screenshotted below, the green checkmark with the file name and a date and timestamp. Now, if by any chance you uploaded the wrong file, you can select delete and remove the previously uploaded files. Or if you realize, oh wait, I left this information in, or I forgot to update X or Y, this is a good time where you could delete that. There will be several other chances to do so, but just note that delete option is already there for you if any errors were made along the way. The next report is D1, which is the premium and life years. Now, this is information that while the plan may have it on hand, a lot of it you may need to obtain from your TPA. So be prepared to make time to ensure that you have that information before the reporting deadline approaches. So here, now fortunately, the first section, the blue section, is a repeat of what you've reported before. The issuer TPA name and the issuer TPA EIN. You should not enter more than one value for this particular one. And here you're entering the next column, the 9-digit EIN. Then the state that all the that the plan is available in, and the market segment, again, that the plan falls into, either small employer plan that's self-insured or self-insured large employer plan. And we have the definition spelled out down here, should the group not be sure for that particular year. And that is when we get into calculating the average monthly premium paid. Now we'll go into a little more detail on the next page on calculating the premium, but essentially what you're reporting is the average medical premium per member per month that was paid by the members themselves. So this is the employee contribution information right here. So you would be including premium equivalents that was paid by the members for their self-funded coverage. You would also exclude any amounts paid by the employer or other plan sponsors on behalf of the members. Now, there are a couple ways to go about aggregating. Again, we'll go into more detail, where you could calculate the weighted average monthly premium paid by the members, or the amount using the total level data from all the plans on the aggregation level. And the amount to report here would be for the calendar year, again, either 2020 or 2021. The next column is going to be similar to what we just discussed, only this is the employer share of the premium. You're again reporting the per member per month medical premium paid by employers on their behalf. You'll include the premium equivalent for the self-funded coverage and any amounts paid by a group, trust, association, or MIWA plans. And if there are separate employers or other plan sponsors making those contributions, make sure to separate those out and include that information. And then we're calculating life years and the member months. Here, you'll calculate the member months using the number of members who are covered on any given day for each calendar month, adding the number of members in each month to calculate the total member months for the calendar year, and then dividing that number by 12. And from there, you'll round the resulting number to the 8th decimal place. I know that sounds like a lot, but certain numbers can actually go on that long, so having a cutoff is a good thing. After that is an earned premium column that will not apply, so you would leave that blank. Then premium equivalents for self-funded plan. This is for self-funded plans and arrangements that do not rely primarily on premiums. So here they would report the premium equivalent amounts that were representing the total cost of coverage paid based on basically the claim costs or administrative cost or other ASO or TPA fees and stop-loss premiums. And note that a self-funded employer can use the costs that are used under the group's COBRA premium plan. So if you have a calculated COBRA premium, which essentially uses the same actuarial information, past costs and fees and claims, you could use the COBRA premium rate as well for the premium equivalent figure that you would list here, but you would not include the 2% administration charge, as that would not apply to the actual premium. And last, you'll list ASO or TPA fees paid for the self-funded plans. This would be included in the premium equivalent, but you're going to be breaking it out here for that column and only report the amounts paid for the specific calendar year. And similarly, for the stop-loss premium paid, you're going to report the stop-loss premium paid to the insurer. This would also be included in the premium equivalent, but you're breaking it out for this final column. And note again, it is for the calendar year that you're reporting this amount, even if it's specific to a plan year. And again, as we stated before, when you're calculating life years, what you would do is note the number of members. The number of members is any person who had health coverage under the group health plan, enrollee, dependent, participants, beneficiaries. Those are all considered members. Calculate the life years, you first need to calculate the member months. So you're going to look at the number of members covered on any given day for the reference year, add the number of members for each month to calculate each total member months, and then you'll add the number of members for each month to calculate total member months for the reference year, and then calculate the life years by taking those total member months divided by 12, and then rounding the result to the 8th decimal place. And as you can see in the example down here, it is possible for especially numbers divided by 3 to go on for that many decimals. The D2 report is spending categories. Now, this is definitely information where the TPA is going to be very valuable here to these purposes. So again, make time to ensure that you have gotten all this information in complete forms for submitting this information if you are responsible for submitting the D2 report. So again, fortunately, the first 4 columns are going to be the same as what you submitted before. TPA name, EIN, the state that it's marketed in, and the market segment. Now, spending category, here you're going to enter one of the following values, and you will not enter more than one value at a time. And then you would create an additional row for the other values that may apply to your specific spending category and plan. So here the valid values are going to be one of the following: hospital, primary care, specialty care, other medical costs and services, known medical benefit drugs, and estimated medical benefit drugs. But again, do not enter more than one value here. Also note that you may be reporting data related specifically to the calendar year that may have also been paid or received through March 31st of the following calendar year, given that a lot of plans are going to have run-out periods with claims that may end up being paid for the prior year. So for non-calendar plan years, you can include only the portion of experience that was incurred during the plan year and paid or received through March 31st of the following calendar year. So bear in mind that even if you're looking at a specific calendar year, the spending itself may bleed over into the following calendar year, and you'll want to make sure that you have adequately gone to at least March 31st, if that does apply to your group, to ensure that all paid claims are factored into these spending categories. Now, what to include? Here we're gonna, the next column is total spending. You're not offsetting any of the spending yet. That will come up in the cost sharing and other amounts. You'll be including payments that are made by the plan and cost sharing made by the members, kind of the most obvious and straightforward amounts that are being paid towards plan spending, and any claims liability, including claims incurred during the reference year but are not paid or were not reported, as of March 31st of the year following the reference year. Now, actually, what you would remove, if this applies to your groups, though, for the most part, we're thinking that's going to be fairly unlikely. Any net payments that the plan may be receiving from any federal or state reinsurance or cost sharing reduction program, any prescription drug rebates, fees, or other payments, and any other manufacturer cost sharing assistance that the plan may have received, if known. You're also going to exclude any ineligible claims, duplicate claims, recovered or overpaid claims, any third-party liabilities or denied claims, basically anything that didn't actually affect the plan's bottom line in the end. Payments for services other than the medical care, such as quality improvement, fraud detection, other recovery expenses, life reserves, or any changes or payments from the state or federal risk-adjusted programs that may have occurred during the reference year. The next column, total cost sharing, here is where you'll include any other deductibles, co-insurance, and co-pays that members would have made, any other amounts that may have been paid through an HSA or other reimbursement account. You will subtract any other cost sharing paid by secondary insurance if that's known, and any other rebates or fees or reimbursements that are passed to members, or any other cost sharing assistance that members may have received directly. And last, other amounts that should not be applied to the deductible and or out-of-pocket maximum. Here, you will list any billed amounts that were not applied to the deductible or out-of-pocket maximum, that were not paid by the plan and not included in total spending, such as disallowed amount on non-covered services for prescription drugs or a formulary, or any other cost-sharing amounts that were not applied to the deductible or the out-of-pocket maximum. So let's say the manufacturer cost-sharing amount is not included towards a member's deductible or out-of-pocket maximum as part of an accumulator or adjustment program. Those are amounts that you would list in this final column. So again, once you have that report assembled, you will be including those. Now here you see a long list of all the possible files that the group or the TPA may be submitting. But again, what we're discussing are the first two files, and they will be submitted in the first two modules at the top, D1 and D2. So again, remember, they will only be providing those first two reports, and the data that's being requested within each file can be found in the reporting form instructions to put all of that together. And also, if you're not using those templates, though, bear in mind that the system will only accept CSV files. Now, next is the narrative response for the module. Now, these are fairly lengthy and particular requirements. So again, you want to make sure you have requested the correct information from the right parties towards this response. or that you know how to locate the information that is needed to make the response yourself. So CMS is saying that they want the group to address the following information in a Word document or document that's made into a PDF. First, the employer size. Here you're going to indicate how exactly you determined that you are the employer size category that you are. You would indicate if you used actual counts or estimates to determine the size of the employer for the self-funded plan. You would describe your estimation method if you used any estimate to come to that conclusion. Most likely, I think it will be very straightforward as to how you reach the conclusion, so that should be clear enough and easy enough to indicate. Next, you're going to be discussing any net payments that you received from a federal or state reinsurance or cost-sharing reduction program. So if applicable, you're going to note how you accounted for any net payments received from reinsurance and cost-sharing programs. And so doing whether those were offset or included in any of the premium amounts paid. Next, you will include any drugs that were supplied that are missing from the CMS crosswalk. If the CMS crosswalk is missing any national drug code for a drug that you prescribed during the reference year, and that was covered under the plan's pharmacy benefit, you're going to include that drug name and therapeutic class that you used at this point here. Again, that is an unlikely area to come up, but that is where it would be reported. Next, you'll be reporting on the medical benefit drugs and the costs associated with those. Here, you'll describe how you estimated the portion of any bundled or alternative payment arrangements that applied to any of the drugs that were covered under a medical benefit that would have been reported in D2, and you report any allocation methods, if applicable, towards those portions. And yes, there's more. You'll also include any prescription drug rebate descriptions. You'll describe the types of rebates, fees, and other reimbursements that you included or excluded in the prescription totals and rebates by therapeutic class and rebates by the top 25 drugs. And you would explain any negative values for any rebates, fees, or other reimbursements. Again, this is information that, where possible, the TPA or PBM is going to have to provide this information for you. So make sure that you are requesting this information timely and in full. You'd also describe any allocation methods for those rebates. Here you would note how you offset those allocations, and your description must include enough information that CMS can see whether the method for allocation was reasonable and straightforward. And last, you're going to be describing the impact of the drug rebates on those premium and out-of-pocket costs, providing as much detail as possible. Now, essentially, this is information that's already been provided as to what was received and how it was offset, but you can indicate, I would think, what the impact was based on your market segment, how much was saved, what the impact was on your tier for the drugs in the formulary, or a removal of various generic equivalents from the formulary, and a quantitative estimate of the impact if possible, which I would take to mean how much was actually saved as a result of those rebates and fees that were received. And again, while it may be clear enough for the group to say we ended up saving, say, 20%, that is information that can probably be more easily calculated by your PBM. So make sure that the information you provided is either calculated by your PBM or is information that your PBM agrees with. And again, fortunately, once that's assembled, uploading the narrative and supplemental files is very straightforward. That's step 4 of the process. Note that the system only allows one narrative document and up to 30 supplemental documents to be uploaded. That would supplement the narrative information that you're providing. So once all those files have been uploaded, click the Save and Continue button, and you go on to step 5. Now, step 5, fortunately, you are not submitting any other new data anymore. This is your opportunity to review the information that you have uploaded. So it will show sort of a summary of what you have and have not submitted, and that'll be very helpful in particular for a group that is not submitting anything. So you will see if the P1, P2, and D1 lines are checked off, and if any section requires edits, such as what you uploaded or other documents, you can select the Edit button down in the bottom left corner. located within this banner of all the previous steps, and you can review your submission. Now, when you have reviewed everything and no more further edits are required, the review submission page will list everything that's there. You will go down and finish your review, and you will click the submit button down at the bottom. Now, if it's been submitted and it was successful, you will receive this submission successful box with an ID number. You should either take a screenshot of this, print it out, or at least write down that submission ID for your records, because you may need this in order to return to the reporting or review information that you may have submitted. So after you've recorded the submission ID number, you would click on Return to Dashboard and then return to the RxDC homepage, or you can select Submission Receipt to get a printable version of your successful submission page. Then you can download that for your files. Now, if you need to, for whatever reason or another, submit or look at or review your reports on the module, this will be the page to look at. The dashboard page will be updated to show a table listing all the existing submissions. It'll actually say in progress or completed. And so you can sort the items within the table or select the submission ID to view it or resume it on that particular page if you need to come back to it. And just so you can see, if any of the submissions throughout the process come up as incorrect, or say you uploaded the wrong file for the wrong step, you may see this file submission error window. So if your file contains errors, the system will show a red banner with additional details on what fields need attention. So here you'll see like which field and exactly what the error is. It might be the format, it might be the type of document that was entered. And if you receive an error message, you should go back and make corrections and re-upload the file. Also, if you need to navigate away or take a break from this long drawn-out process and you need to return to the home page, you will get a warning message that will remind you to save your work and safeguard you from going away and losing any work. So it'll appear if you're about to navigate away from your active submission and alert you to save that work. And so you can either choose to continue or close and stay on the page. So that was a fairly broad overview of actually submitting the data involved in this process. Now Liliana will take you through the next steps and summarize sort of the issues that are most important and overarching in this process. Thank you, Liliana.
Thank you, Sonia. As you may have seen both through Sonia and Darcy's presentation and slides, it is a very labor-intensive process. So we do encourage you to start this process early. So what would be the next things that you as a plan sponsor, potential reporting entity, should recognize and review? First of all, hopefully you can work with your third-party administrator to determine what aspects of RxDC reporting they will assume the responsibility for. And if you have already determined that the PBM will handle some aspects of reporting under Section 204 and the TPA will handle other aspects, make sure you familiarize yourself with the types of reports you will be required to submit to CMS via the HIOS system. So a few items to remember. Remember to identify the parties that will be acting as a role within the HIOS system. Who will be those individuals? Most commonly, you will have individuals who have familiarity with your medical plan and the pharmacy spend. This will be people from the HR department. This will be individuals from finance department that will be able to assist you with the filing process. Remember, they need to become registered users. And as Darcy mentioned earlier, this process can take several weeks. So we encourage you, once you've determined that reporting is your responsibility, that you reach out to your TPA and your PBM to gather the information to complete the reports that both Darcy and Sonia have discussed, primarily Sonia, and that you use the right template. Once that is done, you've collected the information from the vendors. Make sure that if in fact the vendors have agreed to file for one or more sections of the Section 204 Consolidated Appropriations Act filing requirements, that they have agreed in writing. Why? Because if they fail to file on your behalf, the ultimate responsibility of filing falls upon the plan, which is the employer's plan sponsor, which means that if in fact they fail to file, there will be penalties potentially assessed against you. There is good faith compliance for the first filing that is due on December 27, 2022. However, there will be future filing requirements that will have to be satisfied on an annual basis by June 1st. So make sure that you start gathering the information that you need to complete the P2, D1, and D2 reports, and potentially the narrative if your PBM and or TPA will not be handling the narrative. Also make sure that you are ready to obtain that HIOS user ID. As Darcy mentioned, it is a very time-consuming process, and because it could take up to 3 weeks to address any issues you may have and then also assign users, we strongly encourage you to start the process now, because you will be required to file those reports no later than December 27, 2022. We do anticipate issues with the system. We anticipate glitches happening. Thankfully, we have provided access to you via links to the various resources, as well as a phone number you can call CMS to hopefully obtain assistance in finalizing the filing process. With that said, if you have any questions regarding today's presentation, we encourage you to reach out to your hub representative, and they may connect you with your required Chief Compliance Officer or member of our compliance department that will be able to address any questions you have. We thank you for joining us today and hope that you can easily address the RxDC reporting requirements through the use of today's presentation. This concludes today's presentation. Thank you for joining us.